Hi, and Frank is there. Frank's on the edge of my screen. There, hello. All right. Um, a beautiful day, and here comes.
Bertrice? Beatrice?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. And Marla is here. And what is your name, dear? You on the left there on the
Wants to know your name.
My name is Beatrice Noble.
Beatrice.
Beatrice.
What?
Beatrice.
Beatrice.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning. Good morning. A beautiful day. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. The sun is brilliant this morning, and the plants that are now growing in the spring and summer uh, emergence are reaching out for the light, reaching out for this beautiful sunlight that has come 93 million miles. 93 million miles from the sun to here to warm the earth and to provide the energy for all the plants and animals on the earth. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how the sun that is shining 24 hours a day somewhere is able to provide enough energy, being 93 million miles away? Um, it's pretty amazing. How does the sun work? The sun works by crushing atoms together, kind of squeezing atoms together to create energy. Um, every moment, a large number of hydrogen atoms, which are the simplest atoms, are squeezed together, and under tremendous heat, about 15 million degrees, and tremendous gravity, the atoms release a tiny bit of their energy, and that energy is what powers the sun. It's a very complex process, actually, and it depends on the certain structure of the atoms. How did that? How did the atoms have that structure? How did they have the parts necessary to create the stars and the light and the sun, and all that we experience is the gift of the sun? How incredible. How incredible is this world in which we live, full of plants and animals of so many different varieties, so many shapes and forms, whales and jellyfish and sponges and sardines and butterflies and redwood trees and cactus and orchids and so many different varieties of plants and animals, all interacting with each other and with the air and with the sunlight. You know, I was just reading this wonderful book I have called Making Eden. Making Eden. And I think I may have shown you this book before. It's written by a fellow, an English professor, who has studied how plants went from the waters of the world to the land, which was an immense and an incredible journey. Um, and we're just beginning to understand how complicated that journey was, to go from a lake or a river or an ocean to living on the dry land, where the wind and the sun could remove the moisture from the leaves of a plant or the stems, and reduce the plant to nothing in no time. But plants figured out how to live on the land, and that was one of the great revolutions in the life of the earth. Any questions? We know today that that revolution was based on changes in the genes of plants. What are the genes of plants? They're information centers. In every cell, there is information in what we call the genome. The genome has the DNA in it, a strand of building blocks that provide the information for the cell, how to grow, how to produce proteins, how to create organs, all things necessary for life. I shouldn't say all things, but many things are contained in this strand of information we call the DNA. And it was that strand of information that changed in the early plants and gave them the ability to live on the land. We now know much more about how DNA changes over time, how it creates the possibility of new life forms and new places that life can live in. If you go over the earth, you find that life lives almost everywhere, has adapted to the most extreme, almost the most extreme conditions, such as the deserts and the barren wastes of Antarctica. Although there isn't much life there, there is some. And we even have a few large forms of life, such as the penguins, which huddle together on the ice without any shelter throughout the freezing winter of Antarctica. How incredible is that? What is life? How is it that life can take so many shapes and sizes and forms? Imagine the difference between a spider and a penguin, for example. It's incredible. Yet both the spider and the penguin use many of the same processes to exist. The process of taking in food and breaking it down into energy is the same for the penguin and the spider. Fundamental processes are what we call in science conserved. That means they're guarded against change. And rightly so, because if they change, we wouldn't be here. Things like our digestion, the way we breathe, the way we move, the way we think, the way the nervous system works, all these things are highly conserved, and that means that the body is always protecting the basic functionings. At the same time, we have flexibility. We have the ability of life to change, and that's why life has taken on so many different varieties and forms. And that's an interesting mix of qualities, the ability to keep things as they are, and the ability to change. So, I mean, that's really, I think, so remarkable when you think about it. It's really quite mind-boggling. Any questions or comments? All right, maybe I'm going to read a little poem before we continue, and let's see.
Hey, I have a question. It's unusual, probably has nothing to do with it, but it does have the. It's about. I went walking the other day.
Yes.
Saw some kind of bug. I even took a picture of it. I don't know. It almost looks like it could have been a wasp, but
Yeah.
it had part of a red wing on it, but it was dragging a spider.
Really?
Yes. It was
Wow.
dragging a spider.
Well, it could have been a wasp.
It's,
Um, there are about 100, I think, different kinds of wasps.
okay, this insect had orange like wings.
Hmm.
I don't know if you can see this. Maybe I don't know if you can see.
Oh, you took a picture.
I did. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the bug dragging the spider.
Oh, well, let's
You know
see.
what? See that orange wings on it?
Yeah, yeah,
Even his testicles, his antennas are orange.
yeah. That's interesting too.
Dragging a spider.
Well, right. I'm not sure. It could be a some sort of ant, a soldier ant.
This thing
Or
flies. So the soldier ants fly?
yes, sometimes. Um, how how um how big was it? Would you say a half inch long?
It was about a half. Yes. Yes.
Hmm. It probably was a wasp of some kind.
Yeah.
Probably was a wasp. There's a particular wasp that goes after spiders.
Mhm.
So that could be that kind of wasp.
Okay.
Um, but I would
Like interesting.
most likely, yes. That's it's interesting. You took a picture of that.
Yeah, I was looking
Um,
because we actually saw him drag this spider. Yeah, he was pulling the spider across the road. You know, it's in a park. It's in the Castelloma Park in Antioch, where I walk all the time. And I just happened to see it going across. It was dragging the spider. So do they like sting the spiders or something to knock them out?
yes. What they sometimes do is to sting the spider and to paralyze the spider.
Yeah, 'cause it looked like the spider couldn't move or anything. You just
Yeah, yeah, it probably was paralyzed. And then what they do is they inject their eggs into the spider, and the spider goes on living, and then the eggs hatch within the spider, and they the spider becomes the food for the baby wasps inside.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a possibility here. I'm not sure that's actual what happened, but it's possible. Anyway, the world is full of these little dramas that go on all the time that most people don't seem to notice. It's great that you notice that. Um, it's, I think, really important to be be aware of what's going on in the world, even on the most tiny scales. Um, so that's very interesting. Um, there are so many insects and spiders in the world that you could discover a new one in your backyard without probably not too difficult to do that. Um, anyway, the world is integrated. The world is interrelated, and all things are moving in a direction with all other things. Um, I wanted to read a little bit of this poem. Um, but I do appreciate you stopping to show us that. That was, Marla, that was that's really, that's what this is all about. It's observing the world around us. You know, that's what this class is about.
That park all the time. I even seen 3 baby owls.
Owls.
Yeah, I'll show you that. Wait a minute. Because when I see stuff like that, I take pictures.
Oh, that's great.
It wasn't there. So there's one right here is peeking up. There's
Oh, wow.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where were these?
This is all in that same park.
Really?
Contra Loma Park in Antioch. There's a lot of
Oh,
wildlife there. They have there's a reservoir there, so we of course that's our drinking water. But it's a big park that I hike in.
yeah.
When I see odd things like that, because when I seen the 3 owls, I'm like, these are babies. Where's their mom? And in this same park, they have coyotes
Oh, wow.
come out at night because I walked one day late at night.
Yeah.
Hear them, and then I saw them on one side. It looked like they were communicating from one side to the other because they were like 2 on one side, and they started
Oh,
and then they started howling, and then 5 more on the other side started howling back at them,
wow.
going back and forth. All I could do
Well,
was get out of here.
ah. Well, people are seeing more coyotes now.
Yeah.
The coyotes seem to be coming down towards the cities now. That's interesting. Um,
I see baby rabbits.
anyway, um,
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
so let me read a little of this poem. Um, Later, I was in a field full of sunflowers. I was feeling the heat of midsummer. I was thinking of the sweet electric drowse of creation when it began to break. In the west, clouds gathered, thunderheads. In an hour, the sky was filled with them. In an hour, the sky was filled with the sweetness of rain and the blast of lightning, followed by the deep bells of thunder. So, everywhere around us, there are wonders. Everywhere around us, in what we think of as ordinary, is really extraordinary when we begin to look more closely at them, such as a glass of water on the table. A glass of water, the water in the glass is a wonder of the universe. The water is a combination of what? Of hydrogen and oxygen, and somehow these 2 atoms combine to make this substance which gives rise to life. Without water, there would be no life on the earth. And we have water in abundance on the earth, fortunately. Water is one of the most intriguing substances. It's the only one we know that is a liquid at normal temperatures and can evaporate into the air and then fly thousands of miles across the earth and fall as rain somewhere else. Nothing else does that. And any other liquid would that practically we know of wouldn't work for life. It's interesting that the universe contains this substance which is fundamental to life. I can't tell you all the ways that water makes life possible, but if you want to study water, you can find that water will interact with the cells and life in such a way that it's incomprehensible. It is absolutely fundamental to to all life. In fact, we've never found a kind of life that does not depend on water. Even life that can dry out and look dead for 100 years or more um, can suddenly come to life when you add water. How strange is that? Seeds, which can be thousands of years old, have been made to germinate just by adding water. It's incredible how the universe works, how the stars work, the sun, how the air provides the necessary nutrients for life. The nitrogen in the air, for example, is fundamental to life, and life is able to take that nitrogen and use it for growth. Life also takes carbon from the air and uses that for its growth. About a quarter of I was reading just today, about a quarter of the carbon that we put into the air by burning gasoline is absorbed by trees. And these trees then turn that carbon into themselves, becoming the bark and the trunk and the roots and the leaves. Carbon is now part of the tree, and that's pretty amazing. When we drink a glass of water, that water becomes us. That water not only is is taken in by us, but actually becomes part of us. Any questions or comments?
So actually, without water, you just cannot survive.
I'm sorry?
Without water, you cannot survive without water.
That's right. That's right. We can survive for a while without food, but we can't survive very long without water. So water is one of those things that is necessary for the existence of us and all life. The oceans are the greatest reservoirs of water on the earth. The oceans contain more than 98% of the water of the earth, and the precious fresh water is only about 1 or 2% of the whole amount of water on the earth. So we need to guard that precious water. We need not to pollute it and use it sparingly. Right now, a lot of water is being pulled out of the ground, pumped out of the ground in different parts of the world, and that water is being used to grow the crops for us. But that water is running out, and we are pulling more water out of the ground than is going back in. And so that may become a problem in the next 50 years or so. We have to learn how to live with water, how to use it in a very sparing way. The trees of the world have learned to take water in from their roots and drive it up the trunk into the branches and the leaves. The leaves are constantly being supplied with water so that the amazing process of photosynthesis can continue. The leaves take water and sunlight and part of the air and make sugars and starches from that in an amazing process that has only become known to us in the last 50 years or so. For all of history, we had no idea how plants actually make their food, and now we understand it's from the light and the water and the very air that surrounds us. Any questions or comments?
So if you didn't have water, what would you do?
If we didn't have water, there would not be any life on the earth.
Oh, okay.
It would be like the moon. The moon, has apparently has no water on it, or maybe some water deep in the ground, but the moon is very dry, like a huge desert. So is Mars. Mars may have some water deep underneath the ground or somewhat underneath the ground, but we don't see much surface water on Mars. It's not like the Earth at all. And so Mars also is like a very cold desert. And we have not seen any evidence of living things on Mars. There may be something in the soil we don't know yet. We're still beginning to explore Mars. There are some clues that there might be life on Mars of some kind, but not like birds or trees or, mice or giraffes or whales or anything like that. There may be some kind of bacteria living in the soil of Mars. Every year there's a certain amount of gases given off by maybe by living things in the soil of Mars. We don't know, but we do find certain gases like methane being released at certain times of the year on Mars, which may indicate that there may be something living on Mars. We've discovered there are many planets around other stars in our universe, which is filled with stars, unimaginably filled with stars. We keep saying there are more, science says that there are more stars than grains of sand on the beaches of the world. That's a very remarkable statement. And it talks to the fact, or it speaks to the fact that we see only a small fragment of the universe with our eyes. We see only a tiny, tiny fraction of what is out there. With our big telescopes, we can see that the universe extends and extends, and we really don't know where the end of it is. The universe may go on forever, in a sense. It might be far larger than we think it is. And today we say there are at least 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. A galaxy is a collection of hundreds of billions of stars. And so the amount of stars in the universe may be much more than we understand. Also, we would have planets around those stars, and the likelihood, because the universe seems to be constructed the same everywhere we look, the likelihood that life has also arisen on those planets. What do you think? Is that possible? That there may be life on other worlds? Yeah? It's hard to hear you. I'm sorry. Did you say you thought there was life on other worlds? Hmm. So we 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 live with um, the we live in a universe that seems to be producing life, and well, at least here on Earth, and most probably elsewhere as well. And the question then arises, what is the universe? Is the universe some kind of nursery for life? Is the universe an entity that produces life because of its very nature, the way that it's put together? When we look out into space, we find great clouds of water, of tiny crystals of water that contain oceans of water. And that's really amazing, I think, and speaks to the possibility that life is a common thing in the universe. I'm going to read another poem, and then we'll say good night or good morning. Um, let's see. Here's a poem called What Gorgeous Thing. This is by Mary Oliver. I do not know what gorgeous thing the bluebird keeps saying, his voice easing out of his throat, beak, body, into the pink air of the early morning. I like it, whatever it is. Sometimes it seems the only thing in the world that is without dark thoughts. Sometimes it seems the only thing in the world that is without questions that can't and probably never will be answered. The only thing that is entirely content with the pink, then clear white morning, and gratefully says so. I want to thank you all for being in class today. I hope you will continue your studies of the universe, of the world. It's, as Marla showed us earlier, it's important to notice the little things of the world. It's important to notice the water on our table, the food before us, the light coming into the room. Everything is a miracle. Thank you all very much. Be well. Take care of yourselves. It's good to see you. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye now. Thank you, Marla.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Be well. Take care.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Next week.
Next week.
All right.
We'll try it again.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.